Hello, and just like that, we're into Module 6. So Module 5 just wrapped up with the 2 discussion posts and the scavenger hunt. That's going really well. Keep in mind with the discussion posts, people have been really great about putting questions in there, like as they're responding to other people's posts. But it seems like people are not catching on to responding to those questions. Perhaps you should make sure that somebody hasn't already asked you a question, and it would be really nice and polite if you could respond to what they're asking you. Just a kind reminder for that. Before I dive into Module 6 here, it's huge. I apologize in advance. I'm sorry they had to cram a lot of these things into this module, but it does kind of mimic really the workload that you get at the very beginning of a course when it's a new prep for you and you haven't got any kind of planning, the amount of things that are kind of overloaded at the beginning. Sadly, it also comes at the most busiest time of year. I know I'm going into exams here in the next 2 weeks, so to have the most amount of marking for the course to do during the most amount of marking for the school year is a bit overwhelming. So I don't mind at all if you choose to email me and ask for an extension and carry this module into the first week of July when you might have a little bit more time. Just send me a quick email and I'll gladly give you that extension. So let's take a look at this module and why it's so big, because it is getting into the actual idea of planning that unit that you have decided to do for your unit plan. Alright, so the first part is designing the course outline. So I call it, what is the course about? So when you get this course assigned to you, you have to create the syllabus within the first week, which outlines everything that you are deciding to do in the course, how many units you're going to do, the value of those units. Even for myself, for English, I have to determine what novels are going to be read, all these kinds of things. When you look up and research different course outlines for the course code you have chosen, you'll see some are very detailed and some are very vague. And some are just land in the middle, and it really depends on the teacher's outline and point of view, and often department heads and principals also have some say in what goes into those outlines. I personally keep mine pretty vague, especially with English. Like I might list a few titles here and there, but without really knowing the students well enough, I don't like to really narrow down exactly what we're going to do. But then other courses that I've taught before, these H course codes really work great. Like the HSP, you know exactly you're going to do a unit on psych, you're going to do a unit on soc, you're going to do a unit on anthro, and then there's going to be a accommodating project. Like it lays it out for you in the curriculum. World religion, same thing. You're going to do a unit on Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, some of the major religions. Like it all makes sense. So to really take some time to look at the different course outlines and critique it, and then come up with your own. And that goes in the discussion post so you can see other people's ideas. A lot of you have chosen the same courses, so it's going to be great that you get to kind of bounce ideas off of each other. This is a quick reminder before we get into the next stage about learning goals and success criteria. When I first designed this ABQ for NIPSing, back in 2013, it was kind of the first time hearing about learning goals, and now I feel like, oh, it's really part of things now. If you've recently graduated from NIPSing University, you've definitely heard about learning goals and success criteria. Even if you're currently in some boards, you have been taught how to do co-constructed success criteria during some PD session in the last little bit, so I don't feel like I have to hammer home a lot. But a reminder that I have put a few resources in there from EduGains about those things and what they look like at the secondary level. I know there was someone posted a great discussion question about co-constructed success criteria at the secondary level, and if it seems more contrived or more work. Yeah, it does, especially when we're starting to see now students who have been through this system now since 2013 or so, for the last 5 years. When we're starting to get them, they are a bit like hammered home a little too much with it. But the research is sound. If they know how they're going to be evaluated, and then they are to be more successful with it. So keep that in mind as well as you start planning the how am I going to be marked section. So this is the second discussion post you have to do, and it has to do with the backwards design and what the accommodating is going to be at your end of the course. That's going to be part of this 30%, right? So if you know where they're going to go at the very end, like what they need to produce on the exam, then you kind of backward design from that, right? So this 70-30 split, this is mandatory in Ontario. There's nothing you can do about that percentage change. So 70% of everything they do in class gets counted for the mark. And then 30% of their mark comes from a project and the exam. And you get to determine how much each of those are going to be worth. So you can go half and half, 15 and 15, or say something like a cooking class where it's more practical. You might want to put 20% on them doing their final cooking project and 10% on the exam where they kind of talk about some healthy eating habits or something to that effect that you're testing them on, right? So deciding what that's going to be helps with that end game. So another example here, a lot of you have picked the HSP or HSB course code. So the end result in the 30%, the commenting, is usually design a social science experiment of their own, and they usually have to use a theory from a psych, social, anthro kind of background in the write-up and stuff like that. So if they're designing a social science experiment, they probably have to collect some data. So during the unit, perhaps, that you're going to plan for your unit, you are going to teach them some data collection skills that they will have to apply when it comes to the end of the course for that. So that's the kind of idea of backwards planning a little bit. Is there something I need to teach them in this unit that they're going to need for their culminating or that they're going to need for the exam? And how am I going to express that? So that's what the second discussion is kind of explain what you ultimately think the culminating should be, research some different ideas of some culminating tasks, and think deeply about what you want to do for that area. All right, and then discussion post number 3. Yes, I'm sorry, there's 4 of them. Every day students ask us, what are we learning today? Which brings us back to that learning goals. Looking at your lesson plans again, but in this particular case, you are actually going to go find a lesson plan that you think would be useful for your unit, right? So we've already discussed what we like in lesson plans. Now actually go find one and then post it and then tell us what you would do to change it. What would you add? What do you like? What do you not like? Is there some kind of tech component you could do to it? Is there something that do you actually want to revamp the whole thing and actually do it for your assignment for this one, which would be useful as well, I hope. So it's your first chance to go mining, looking for something, post it, and then maybe other people will look at it and be like, oh, that's a great idea, but I would do this instead in your class, and maybe get some feedback on that. So it's a little bit of an opportunity to do that. So you can post a link from Teachers Pay Teachers if you find it, a PDF file that you find, anything that you can post in there where you're looking at it, something from a Pinterest board even that inspired you and you're like, yes, I can make a whole lesson about this. Okay, and then the last discussion is an idea for a lesson plan ultimately, and it's about teaching the students to do some higher order thinking and connecting to what's going on in the world. So the idea is that you find some kind of newspaper article of something going on in the world that connects to your unit that you are designing, and you have some higher order thinking questions in there for them to respond. So for a university level class, maybe there are a couple homework questions. You read this article, answer these 2 questions, hand it in for homework. Maybe it's part of an exit card. They're reading this article at the end of the class and they have to answer those questions. Maybe it's your hook that you're going to do like a 4 corners. You're going to read the article and then do a 4-corner kind of discussion or something. So think about some different engagements and things you can do to connect what you're learning in class is something that's happening right now in the news and get them critically thinking about what they're learning and applying it to the real world. All right, and that's just the discussion posts. Sorry, there are 4, and then there's the actual assignment, which is creating a lesson plan, which can be daunting. I know. You know, picking a template that works for you. It does not necessarily have to be the Nipsey one. If you've got something that's altered, that's great. But I do ask for the lesson that you choose to be quite engaging. There's nothing wrong with a movie lesson plan. Certainly if you want to include a movie in your unit plan, that's great. But it doesn't give me enough information about your planning and how well you divide up the minutes and stuff. So I am looking for something a little bit more in-depth. Make it something that if in real life I could actually come to your class and see this lesson in action, you'd be super excited for me to come and see it and participate in it. So that's the lesson I'm kind of looking for. I'm looking for your DI in there. Is there technology that's going on? What would make the students put down their phones and be totally engaged in what is going on? So that is the assignment, is actually writing out a full lesson plan. And that's the only full lesson plan I really need. If you want to adapt into some other kind of chart form, day planner form for the unit plan, then that's fine. But I am looking for like a detailed one for this one. Okay, and that's Module 6. I know it's a lot. Again, feel free to ask for that extension. If you have any questions anytime, send me an email. Thanks.